When I became a teacher and I married an archaeologist, I thought, well, gosh, we're really going to own a house.
It's the poverty that you are struggling to make ends meet and not being able to pay your bills on time.
Gasoline is so high, food is so high, everything is so high, expensive, and the check is the same.
If the American dream implies home ownership, Americans may be in search of a new symbol of prosperity. Hello, everyone. I'm Joanne Ferrian. Welcome to a one-hour special edition of Envision San Diego, Getting By. The last several weeks have made clear that owning a home in this country is neither effortless nor an entitlement.
I'm Will Carlos of voiceofsandiego.org. Our unemployment rate now exceeds the national average, and our cost of living continues to be amongst the highest in the nation. Tonight, we examine our local economy, where it's been and where it's going.
We have a studio audience with us tonight and a panel of civic leaders and experts. But first, it's fair to say most of us believe we'll live better than our parents. That might be true if you live anywhere in the country but here.
In San Diego County, it takes us twice as long as other Americans to double our parents' standard of living. We begin our show tonight with a documentary and an introduction to a family who just wanted what their parents had.
Try that other one right there. Okay.
This is a story about Shelley, Thomas,
Archaeologist,
and Tavish Courtney, and the house they bought. The house was on top of a mountain. The mountain was at the edge of San Diego County, and San Diego County was the place Shelley and Thomas had dreamed of owning a home.
You know, my dad does title examining. My mother was a typist, but they owned a house. When I became a teacher and I married an archaeologist, I thought, well, gosh, we're really going to own a house.
We saw this one driving by and it wasn't listed yet, but it had a for sale sign. And I looked on that webpage that it was on, and it looked cute.
Remember how we first came here together, standing on an empty lot, holding hands.
Every day, before I went to sleep, I thought to myself, I want my son to have what I had growing up, and he doesn't have it now.
In 2004, Shelley and Thomas bought this one-bedroom house on Palomar Mountain for $239,000. At the time, it was one of 3 houses in the entire county they could find in their price range. Relieved they had bought into the market before they were priced out, they settled into what they thought would be middle-class family life. But for the Courtneys, home ownership soon became a curse. The mountain, their captor, and the commute, torture. They never foreclosed. That might have been easier. Instead, the Courtneys held onto a house that cost them thousands in car repairs, kept them in traffic for hours a day, and strained their marriage. It even kept them from their son.
I really felt for a while there someone else was raising him. And not just the normal guilt I think some moms feel about going back to work, but definitely this extreme guilt because, I mean, she was literally even doing his laundry because he would have clothes there that I would never even see him in. I mean, I remember him outgrowing clothes I never even saw him in because I saw him in pajamas.
The Courtneys may have only wanted what their parents had, but a new study from the San Diego Association of Governments says that goal is getting more difficult to achieve. In the rest of the country, on average, each generation lives twice as well as their parents. In San Diego County, it takes 2 generations, or 70 years, to surpass our parents' standard of living.
This old house of ours was built on dreams, and the businessman don't know what that means.
Owning a home in San Diego never used to be this hard. Let's go back to 1970. prices were higher in California than the rest of the country. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, the median price of a house in 1970 was $17,000. In California, it was $23,000, a 35% difference. But something happened over the next several decades that saw that differential nearly double. By 2000, the median house price in San Diego County was $234,000. The national average, $147,000, a difference of 60%. The experts say blame it on two things: a Supreme Court decision in 1976 and then Proposition 13, which was passed in 1978. Together, they redistributed and limited property tax increases, taxes that until then went to cities.
Along came Prop 13, which here in California meant what we're going to do is we're going to take property, about 2/3 or more of the property tax, away from local jurisdictions, and we're going to give it to the state.
Marnie Cox is an economist with the San Diego Association of Governments. He grew up in California and has been with Sandag for 30 years. He's seen our skyline expand and our county sprawl. Cox says the changes in policy discouraged cities from building more houses because they diverted property taxes away from local governments. Property taxes are levied against homeowners. Those taxes used to benefit municipalities directly. But under California law, 2/3 of those taxes now go to the state and are redistributed among all school districts in California equally.
When that occurred, it also affected local jurisdictions' land use decisions. Now, it used to be that the major contributor of revenue through property taxes was from houses. That was no longer true, and so houses fell into disfavor.
Cities in San Diego County approved fewer housing developments, and the ones that were built took longer. Instead, local governments encouraged other kinds of development, things like retail, hotels, and a convention center, all of which generate more tax revenue. The impact today: San Diego County is short 100,000 houses. Economists we spoke with say the law of supply and demand is the chief reason houses here cost so much more than just about anywhere else.
You know, I believe the county line is somewhere in between the mountain, as we know it here, and Temecula.
But San Diegans don't give up on owning a home that easily. If there aren't enough affordable houses where they live, they'll move and stay as close to the county line as they can.
There was a time, and I think it's still prevalent with maybe fewer people, but there's still this concept that we can stop growth. People still believe that if you don't let that building permit out, you can stop growth. And so if you stop growth, you've been able to make sure that that new housing unit isn't needed. Well, this is an illusion. In fact, what has happened is that part of the reason for urban sprawl is because you don't have enough housing units in this city, and so it's just simply moved to the next city and been created there.
In San Diego, even if you don't build it, they will still come. Shelley and Thomas Courtney were willing to move up 5,500 feet and live on the edge of a mountain. There was snow.
I came out and had no idea what to do. I was freaking out. I didn't even know if we had a shovel. There was like snow past the tire.
And wildlife.
We had a mountain lion that lived in our backyard, and so you would leave on all your lights to walk through your patio area to get to your car, and yeah, it was really scary.
It was expensive.
The mountain eats tires and brakes. So
in 2004, when the family made the move, the cost of gas was $2 a gallon. By the spring of 2008, it was more than $4 a gallon. But the most difficult thing was the time away from each other. Their infant son was at the babysitter's, in the car enduring a minimum 90-minute commute each way, or in daycare.
When I went back to work full-time, I honestly didn't think I was going to make it. I would end up crying at work. I work Monday through Thursday, 10 hours, and by Wednesday, I would be in tears at work. and have to hide it. It was really embarrassing. And I know my coworkers must have thought I was just like this lame, emotional mom, but literally I hadn't seen my child since Sunday. So, yeah, it's a really bad memory, actually.
The commute nearly drove them both to a breakdown.
It was like 6 months of driving. I was on the 15 for probably 3.5 hours, knowing I still have an hour once I get to Escondido. And I never forget, I was sitting there in the middle of traffic. Out of nowhere, I just slammed my hands down on the steering wheel.
While the Courtneys were stuck in traffic, others were trying to get into the housing market. The subprime mortgage market was in full swing, allowing people who couldn't afford to own a house to buy one anyway. And San Diego was leading the way. According to DataQuick, a company that monitors real estate activity across the country, the median price in San Diego peaked in November of 2005 at $517,000. The rest of Southern California caught up in March 2007, peaking at $505,000. By then, the San Diego market was already on its way down. Murtaza Baksamusa is with the Center for Policy Initiatives in San Diego.
San Diego was, especially in its peak 2005, quite unsustainable. The bubble, in other words, the wages and the earnings were not sufficient to be able to meet the cost that was demanded by these units.
Of course, you know what happened next.
There's a swing outside the kids play on every day. And tomorrow morning, a man from the bank's gonna come and take it all away.
In July 1998, there were more than 2,000 foreclosures in the county. In July of this year, there were 9,500.
Take it all away.
That's what we need. It seems like every time I go, they're more expensive, and you know, you try to keep your little preferred cards, but that still doesn't do much. You know, it's still, I mean, even diapers in the past 10 months having my son have gone up, so.
If the demise of our economy all began with housing, things only got worse when the price of gas and then food went up. Jennifer Trombley is 21 years old, a new mother, married to a 23-year-old Marine.
I try to just make a lot nicer meals at home, and then we cut a lot of coupons.
Jennifer's husband makes $50,000 a year. That includes his allowance for housing. They pay more than $1,700 to live in this 900-square-foot townhouse in Tierra Santa. After utilities, gas, and food, there's little left, or sometimes, like last month, there isn't enough to last until the next paycheck. We found Trombley using a Twitter search. Twitter is another online way to chat with people. We went online and searched for Twitter chatter using the keyword money. Jennifer was talking about looking for change to buy baby food.
I mean, really? Were you quite literally looking for change?
Pretty much.
Back in 1970, remember before house prices escalated, a gallon of milk cost $1.15. Today it's about $3.50 a gallon. According to the USDA, all food prices have increased by 6% over last year. If it continues at that rate, it will be the highest annual increase since 1990. Things like eggs and cheese have seen double-digit increases.
Say, thank you.
Trombley and her husband have found creative ways to stretch their shrinking dollar. He works on weekends as a mover for U-Haul and cleans houses. And to pay off credit card bills,
My husband was donating plasma to pay him off, so because we were, you know, just the extra $25 a month to pay that credit card off was hurting us. So I think he did it somewhere around 8 times. I think that's right. Yeah. But it was good money.
According to the U.S. Census Bureau, 1 in 10 people in the county live below the federal poverty level. That's about $10,000 a year for a single person. But most economists say the federal poverty level is an outdated and meaningless way to measure true poverty in San Diego County. Economists here double that amount, and if you use their calculations, 1 in 4 people live in economic hardship.
It's almost like a person running on a treadmill and not being able to keep up with the space of the treadmill that is increasing all the time. It's increasing so fast that at some point people start falling off.
Back in 1972, the average wage in the county was 30% higher than the national average. In 2005, it was only 5% higher. And now, for every 1 high-paying job created in the county, there are 8 low-paying jobs. The disparity shows in our neighborhoods. Rancho Santa Fe has one of the highest family median incomes in the country at more than $196,000 a year. Drive less than 30 miles to the other side of the county and you'll be here in Barrio Logan, where the median family income is $24,000. Well, the county's median household income did rise in '06. Most of it went to wealthier households. The Center on Policy Initiative says nearly half of all the county's wealth went to the top 1/5 of the population.
The difference we see from 10 years ago and today is that in terms of the bottom is that they have a lot more company. The people at the bottom really, the issue about the shrinking middle class is that a lot of people are being squeezed into the lower class, into the lower sectors of the economy where they're struggling to make ends meet.
Add together an increasing unemployment rate, the high cost of living, and too many low-paying jobs, and you end up here, in a lineup for food. Is this just the beginning that we're seeing?
If more and more middle-class families are losing their jobs and continue to lose their jobs, we will see that demand increase exponentially.
Chris Carter works with the San Diego Food Bank. He left a job in London, lobbying Parliament to work here. A scholarship got him to London as a teenager, but he grew up poor in Alabama with a single mother.
I would save my milk from school lunches to give to my younger sister after school when my mother came and picked us up, because she would be always crying because we didn't have enough food to feed her. I remember going hungry on weekends, and it's so tough, and it really is. It's a really hard thing to experience, and I know what these people are going through because I've experienced it myself firsthand.
In La Mesa, demand for food from the food bank increased by more than 100% between January and July. In Spring Valley, demand is up by 69%, in Chula Vista, 34%. And demand for this state-sponsored supplemental food plan is so high, the food bank, which helps administer the program, has been told to stop taking new clients. 67-year-old Ramona Rodriguez is a volunteer at her neighborhood community center in Logan Heights and a recipient of the supplemental food program.
Gasoline is so high, food is so high, everything is so high, expensive, and the check is the same.
73-year-old Simona Luna is at the front of the line. She receives about $800 a month on Social Security. Her rent is $500 a month. She also buys a bus pass so she can get to the hospital for her cancer treatments. Will this food last you for a month?
Yes,
A whole month?
Yes, because, I don't know, sometimes I eat bread, cookies, like that. It helps. I'm a man, I'm a woman. For my kids, just for my kids.
You raise them on your own?
Yes.
How many?
6.
So compared to that, life is good now?
Yes. Yeah. I still have that cancer, but I feel okay. With the treatment, I feel okay.
Just how did this story begin with the dream of home ownership and end in poverty? We wondered that too. We found our answer in a 2008 San Diego Association of Governments prosperity study, although don't let the name fool you. SANDAG looked at how we compared with 20 similar regions, places like Seattle and San Francisco. When it comes to wages, we're in the middle. Our wages have increased at an average rate compared to other cities. But our cost of living has increased faster than just about anywhere else. We're the third most expensive place to live of those 20 regions. And the biggest reason is housing. In the late 90s and through the early 2000s, San Diego families began paying as much as 50% of their gross salaries on house payments. Now, when you put one over the other, we end up here, dead last, the least affordable place to live. While we like to think it's really the so-called sunshine tax, the beaches, the beauty, the weather that drives prices up and wages down, economists say it's a myth. We haven't built enough houses, and we've created too many low-paying jobs. Ironically, jobs in the service and tourist industries, industries that can only thrive in a place this beautiful with this much sun.
Let's get him!
Remember Shelley, Thomas, and Tavish? They moved out of their house on the mountain last year. They now live in this tiny 2-bedroom apartment in Bay Park.
Are you happy now?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, of course, there's some things I wish, like we had a garage, but yeah, I'm definitely happier and definitely happy. Yeah, without a doubt. I read my kid a bedtime story every night, and we have dinner together every night.
The Courtneys never foreclosed. They never even sold. They couldn't. The market crashed. They continued to pay their rent and their mortgage, barely getting by with the help of some renters who pay a nominal amount to live in their old house. But Thomas, he can't seem to let the dream go. He still comes up here and works on the property. He's a volunteer firefighter and even saved his house from burning down in the wildfires last year, a month after his family had moved out.
You saved the house that really was ruining your lives, your family life, from burning down. It could have burned down. You would have been free. You wouldn't have owned any money.
No.
You would have been free of all this.
Oh, no. Not free of my work and our memories. And even though there was a lot of hard times, we had a lot of nice memories here. We went sledding down over there, and I saw a mountain lion right there. Tavish and I watched Charger games over there, and this is his 3rd birthday tree and his 4th birthday tree and his 1st birthday tree. We took walks. There were things to enjoy about the house. And the other thing is that this home is a beautiful home. It's a wonderful place to live. The man who built this home lived in it his entire life with his wife. They had a beautiful life here. Somebody is going to enjoy this home someday.
Take it all away.
We know much of our destiny may be in the hands of national leaders and future national leaders. But how much power ultimately does our county have over its own economic future? To answer that question, we have with us a cast of civic leaders and experts. Let's begin with some introductions. Donald Cohen is founder and CEO of the Center on Policy Initiatives, an advocacy group that addresses issues affecting working people in the region. Mitch Mitchell is board chairman of the San Diego Food Bank and regional vice president of external affairs for San Diego Gas and Electric.
We also have Council Member Ben Hueso. He represents South and Southeastern San Diego, including Logan Heights. San Diego City Council President Pro Tem Jim Madaffer is here. He's represented District 7 for the past 2 terms. And University of San Diego economist Alan Jin, who publishes USD's Index of Leading Economic Indicators for the county, is here. Many of the economists we spoke with in our research told us regions are as wealthy as their households. And we know our households are suffering in San Diego County.
We like to believe that our higher cost of living and lower wages are a result of the sunshine tax. But is it really a result of poor planning? Let's start on the wages side. Councilmember Jim Madaffa, are we attracting too many low-paying tourism jobs because it's an easy source of tax money?
Well, I think a lot of times we do get a lot of the low-paying jobs just by virtue of the fact that this is a tourist-based economy. I mean, we have biotech, we have the military, we have tourism, which has traditionally played a big role, and unfortunately it attracts a much lower wage-paying community. And also that adds to our woes by a lot of times they can't live where the jobs are. If the jobs are downtown or something, they end up having to find housing other places. That adds to our traffic, that adds to our air pollution. And so part of the problem, again, as the program talked about, we aren't placing the jobs where the people are living, and that adds to the problem as well.
Councilman Ben Weso, do you want to address that as well? Because I know that you represent a constituency where you desperately need jobs in your communities. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, I think the number one responsibility of government is to provide for its constituents public safety, welfare, and really to promote prosperity. And the government does have a lot of ability to promote prosperity through proper planning, through land use policies, through a very deliberate process of trying to attract quality jobs. Like, for example, we're trying to attract quality jobs through San Diego through our planning policies, through tax incentives, through creating a very friendly environment to businesses. If we work together with our federal government, state government, and try to create, target those dollars that they just set aside for quality jobs, if we work collaboratively with them and say, locally, we have a vision for San Diego as being a very good place to live and work, and we're going to partner with the government to provide capitalization, provide incentives, provide a good working environment for businesses. That's how we attract quality jobs to our region.
Donald Cohen, you hear what they're doing and you hear what's going on. Is it working, do you think?
Well, is it working? I mean, I know a lot about what the city is doing. We are making efforts to do things, but I think there's what could be stated in terms of specifically in the tourism industry. We actually have, as a city and as a port district, a great deal of power and leverage to create good jobs. We're the landlord for Mission Bay. We're the landlord for the hotels on San Diego Harbor, for example. So we could say we want a good tourism industry, but we also want an industry that pays livable wages and provides health care. We actually have that within our power to do.
So we could do more, basically.
A great deal more.
We were in the community for the past several weeks talking to various people, and, you know, we heard a lot of discouraging comments. What do you tell young people, like the 26-year-old college graduate we spoke with who said, what do I do? Do I leave? Or is that going to happen where people don't find good jobs here and they end up leaving? Mitch Mitchell?
Well, this has been a concern for a few years. I think we've all talked about this. The great American dream in San Diego is becoming tougher. And we saw this coming, let's be honest. As the housing prices soared, we just kind of said, well, so what if people are paying $500,000, $600,000 for a home? What you've seen is what Councilman Madaffa mentioned is a lot of people who've migrated north. And that's why you have 95,000 cars crossing into San Diego County every day from Southwest Riverside County. So the options for young people today are, well, I still want to be close to San Diego, but they may end up living in Imperial County or Southwest Riverside County. And is that the best alternative? Probably not, for a variety of reasons, but that's what people are going to look to do.
So let's talk about that then. Let's switch to housing. On the housing side, our county's leading economists say we don't build enough houses, and the ones we are building aren't the right kind. We need more urban, dense types of housing stock. Sandag chief economist Marnie Cox says municipalities are not motivated to build more houses.
Well, this had two impacts. We cut down on the supply of housing and prices really started to increase. They were high before because a lot of people wanted to live here. At the same time, a lot of new regulations came in and it lengthened the amount of time that it actually takes a housing unit to be built. In the old days, you could probably get it done in 6 months to a year. Today, it takes 5 to 7 years to get your housing unit through the process. So we've added time to it. We've also made it out of disfavor for local jurisdictions. So local jurisdictions aren't necessarily the home builder's best friend.
Donald Cohen, should city government be encouraging more housing starts, in particular more affordable multi-housing units? And Alan Jim, why don't you step in on that too? Because I know this is a subject that you know a lot about. So we'll start with you, Marnie. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, first off, to be really clear that there's a lot of housing and there's a lot of people. And so there are times we need more and there are times we don't need more. So it's not just a matter of greater supply at this point. So that goes up and down in terms of whether there's a match between supply and demand. What we have developed in the last 10 years, because we're in the down part of the cycle clearly, is a huge amount of housing that was way beyond reach of most people, of many, many people. So if we're not going to be building anything right now because the housing market has hit the skids. What's most important to do as the market comes back up over the next 5 years is make sure that the type of housing we build matches the needs of the people that work here and the wages of the people that work here. And cities have a huge role to play there.
Alan, Jin, all those houses that we built, all of those subdivisions, is the average San Diegan ever going to be able to afford those? Is now the best time for them to be able to afford them?
Well, right now, prices have dropped about 30% since the peak in November of 2005, so things have become more affordable. The problem is they're still relatively high compared to the rest of the country, and there's a potential problem in terms of getting loans now because the standards for lending are more strict, and that was probably a good idea, but it's going to be really difficult for some people then to get into these starter homes still. The problem that we have here is that we lack a lot of buildable land. Most of the central area of San Diego has already been built out, and there is some land available, say, in the South Bay, but most of I think, the development in the future is going to be this urban infill.
And we do have some questions now. We want to open it up to our audience, starting over here. I can get you to stand up, sir, if I can. I'll just hang on to this.
Yeah, my name is Steve Otto. I live and work in San Isidro, right on the border, and I have lots of questions and comments. Right, urban infill development, the city of villages we have in San Diego. I mean, that's where it's going to happen. Ground floor commercial, second, third floor residential. I mean, it just makes sense. It's going to come back to Main Street, as our political folks talk on the. But I want to make an observation that film is very sobering, and I have the pleasure of sitting next to Thomas and his family, and part of that affordability of housing. I asked him, what is the price that you're paying for that apartment here in San Diego now? $1,150 a month for a small two-bedroom apartment. I think this is part of the problem too. It's not just foreclosed houses out there, but it's just that just exacerbates the cost of the problem, the high cost of rentals.
Jim Adaffer, you want to respond to that?
You know, my council colleague here hears me ad nauseum on this at City Council, but part of the problem, first, is 2 points. A, the fiscalization of land use, which Marnie Cox talks about, has created a disincentive for cities to build more housing. It's better because you get sales tax revenue from the Walmarts, from the Kmarts, from the retail. That's one problem that we've had over the years. The car dealerships. The second piece of it is that because elected officials, especially in San Diego, are elected by district, you end up having neighborhoods that basically, they're like NIMBYs, and they basically say, not in my backyard. And here's a classic example. We just spent 3 hours the other day in La Jolla on an 11-unit development where they were debating whether it should be 2 stories or 3 stories. The problem that we find out is whether it's on University Avenue, our transportation corridor there, or El Cajon Boulevard, areas where we should naturally see urban infill densification along transportation nodes and corridors. That's the secret. That's the answer. That's what AB 32 says we have to do for air quality. That's what the new Senate Bill 375 says we have to do. And yet we have city councils, whether it's my council or others in the county, that are afraid to make the tough decisions because of neighborhood opposition. And I say this, this region is going to grow by nearly 1 million people by 2030. 350,000 on the conservative just in our city of San Diego. And until city council members recognize that reality, it gets back to what Alan can preach about all day long on supply and demand economics. If you don't provide the housing, the price is going to go up and stay up. And that's the part of the problem that councils are going to have to make decisions on.
Well, isn't it your job then to convince the public? They may say, not in my backyard, but isn't that still up to you to make those difficult choices?
I'm here to make those tough votes. It's a matter of getting 4 other people, and Ben's usually awesome in this, to be able to step up and do the right thing, to vote for that urban infill, to vote for that transportation corridor type housing, so that way people can start using public transit. They complain about transit in San Diego not being good enough. It's because we are a car key society. We've got to create a disincentive to the car key. Let's start building housing without parking spaces. Right now, we worship parking spaces. Let's not. If you put 1 less parking space in, you might be able to afford another housing unit.
And I'd like to add to that if I can, because I want to bring it back to the electorate being the final say, because the electorate determines who their elected representatives are, and if they elect people that are going to maintain the status quo and to fight change and to fight densification, we're going to see a natural increase in population, because population is going to increase. Even if we don't have migration into our city, population will increase. And if we don't respond to proper planning and through a plan to provide for that new income population, we're going to see more people wind up on the streets in homeless shelters, depending on governments to feed them and to provide housing for them. So it's going to create a situation in our future that is not a very, very nice rosy picture in terms of where we want to be as a region.
Donald Cohen, we hear what we can do. Honestly, you study this sort of stuff. I mean, how much do the city council people, the local elected officials, how much can they actually affect this? How much can they help this? Or is this just markets that just do their thing and just kind of get on with it?
You know, when markets do their thing, we have seen what happens in the banking industry. So the first thing I would say is local governments can do an enormous amount. Let me address the issue of densification, of getting denser, livable communities. The crux of that, of how we make that happen, unfortunately, is a great deal of public revenue. We need several $1 billion of infrastructure, both to fix what hasn't been kept up, and then to build the infrastructure for the future, so that you can build dense neighborhoods that people won't be against, because they've got parks and they've got facilities and they've got roads and all that. And what our elected leaders need to do, and these fellows are on the cutting edge on this, is what we actually have to go to the people of San Diego and say, we actually need a couple of $1 billion. Then we can create the San Diego that's both livable and affordable and decent.
Don't we already have Mitch? Don't we already have mechanisms in place where developers are supposed to be paying money into funds that then can be used to pay for affordable housing and that sort of stuff? Tell me if I'm taking you out of your level of expertise.
No, we've talked about this. I mean, there are FBAs, there are DIF funds, there have been a long talk about tying different funding streams to development. In the end, what San Diego wants to hear, the region, is they want to hear that when the market comes back, that the type of housing you're building has a number tied to it. We can't escape the fact that you can build $500,000 homes, but a lot of people that are getting food from us at the food bank bought that $500,000 home and still can't make it. What we've always talked about is that when you're recruiting people to work here and you bring them from the middle of the country and they come out and go, wow, $500,000, that's way too much. We still have to focus on building $250,000 homes, and the density issue is a problem, but we have to be specific about what we're building in order to give people hope for the future. It's not just, well, let's create density. If you create density and all those homes still cost $500,000, you still have a problem.
Isn't that exactly what we did in downtown San Diego? We created a whole load of $1 million, $750,000.
And look at the foreclosure rate in downtown San Diego.
Right.
And we just let the market do it.
Yes.
That's a redevelopment area, and we could have made far greater demands on the private sector to build balanced communities where they still would have made a great deal of money as developers, and we would have gotten a much greater, better mix of housing.
Just one quick point on that. Sorry, Jan. Just one quick point on that. Is it that we didn't ask the developers to pay into those funds, or is it that we asked them to, they just never did it, and we never followed up on it?
No, they pay what they are required to pay. The funds are way too small to be able to deal with the deferred infrastructure and what we need. It's not about whether they're willing to do what they need to do. They need to do more, but we all need to do more.
And actually, we did look into how much they've contributed. It's about 2% of the overall low-income housing. So that's what builders contribute, and we have a 5 to 7 year waiting list on that.
Right. But that also enhances funds that we already have. We've used redevelopment dollars, we've used federal dollars, we've used housing commission dollars to create affordable housing throughout the city. In my district alone, we created 1,500 brand new units in my first 2 years in office, and we had a waiting list for those homes. We filled them, and so it wasn't like, I mean, we made the hard decisions. We chose to build the homes, and we stood up to some opposition for those homes. But when we built them, there was a line of people waiting, and we provided housing for them. So we do have some resources, and we have to approach this problem with seriousness and with a commitment to really build the homes.
Great, thanks very much, guys. We're going to move on now, so thanks.
And we saw earlier in our documentary, there's a huge disparity between the rich and the poor, and those in economic hardship are increasing. We want to talk now about what our county does or doesn't do for our most vulnerable.
We know from our research for this show that San Diego County has the lowest participation rate in the food stamp program in the country. 1 in 3 people eligible for food stamps here actually receives them. That's according to a report from a national think tank in Washington, D.C. And we're talking about the poorest of the poor, many of them children.
We spent some time at a county office and spoke with some people who were applying for food stamps. We met Laura Harris. She lost her job as a paralegal, and then her parents got sick. She says she's lucky because she knows how to fill out paperwork and can access the system. Here she is.
I don't qualify for the cash aid, but I do qualify for the food stamps and the Medi-Cal, which really helps as far as balancing that budget. So, and I also live in affordable housing for people out there that need to get by. You know, there you go to the housing site and you can put yourself on a waiting list. Sometimes it takes a year to 5 years, but I had to wait like 2 years, and I finally got into affordable housing. So the resources out there, it's just really difficult to find them.
And we asked the Deputy Director of the county's Health and Human Services Department why the participation rate was so low. Here's her response.
So like I'm saying, together with our staff, there are various communities within San Diego County. We're broadening that word, that message, by working with the community partnership. It is our job, and we're working very hard to spread that message, but we can reach a lot of other folks through our community partnerships, and that's what we're determined to do. And as you can see by the numbers last year, it is helping us to make a difference.
Mitch Mitchell, I worked on a story about this a couple of years ago, and I've been hearing the same thing for a couple of years now. We are telling people about this. We are getting the word out. You work with the San Diego Food Bank. How effectively do you think the county, what sort of a job is the county doing in getting the word out about this program?
Well, there could be some great improvements to the system. We in the past 6 to 8 months have been down working with the county. We believe that information is key, but also there are barriers. As you heard there on the screen, when you have to fill out a 28-page application to get support, you know that is a disincentive for a lot of families who can't figure it out and just give up. And one of the things that we've looked at the food bank is it is about collaboration, because we need to promote the resources that are available, especially during this economic crisis. People need to know that they can get, you know, food stamp help, healthy families, you know, discount energy, things of that nature. But you have to make it easier, and the county could definitely improve some.
A cynic would say, we have a Republican, a very Republican group of very Republican county board of supervisors. They're not interested in getting this program out there. They don't want people to know about this program. We've been at the bottom of the pile for years on this program. So, what do you think's going on?
I don't care what the spokesperson, but I think I would be nicer. I won't be as nice as Mitch. I think we have a county government, a board of supervisors that is not doing their job. Whether they care or not, I don't know as individuals, but what we are seeing from the county in healthcare services, in food stamp services, in the entire safety net that they are responsible for, they are not at work.
Okay, well, I think
and
we're
we have
going
a
to go to
question
the
over
audience
here from our audience.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Tracy. I'm actually with the San Diego Hunger Coalition, and we work on food stamp issues. And one of the biggest barriers we've seen is that there's a stigma associated with getting food stamps. And I really feel like we should be celebrating the families that go and get these services, because they are the ones that are stepping up to make sure that their kids can get healthy food and that they can provide for their families, so they can avoid things like diabetes and the health problems that occur and the loss of productivity that occurs when people go hungry. And it is happening every single day in our county, where parents skip meals so their kids can eat, seniors have to skip buying medications or skip medications so they can buy food. So just to comment on that stigma and maybe what the county or the city is doing to overcome that.
I was going to speak to that because I was going to say that as part of the barrier to the program. And in response to that, what I do in my district is I work with the local nonprofit corporations that help provide services in this area. Because as you saw on the show, that was the Sherman Heights Community Center in my district. There are others like the Barrio Station, Hearts and Hands, Casa Familiar that step up where the county government doesn't step up, and they start providing food in collaboration with the food bank. And they do that at the local level, and we help them to stay in business to make sure they continue to provide these services. But I think there's a very real stigma associated with food stamps. And when I was a kid growing up, we used to ridicule people that were on food stamps. And it hurts families, and it tears families apart. And I think, to summarize, I think we need to rethink the food stamp program. We need to relabel it and find a way to make those funds work for the public through a creative program.
And we have another comment here from our audience.
Good evening, gentlemen. I'm Lonnie Stacks. I am 62 years old, and I'm single and supporting myself and my cats, and I'm on food stamps. And I can say that it is a horrible experience to have to go through the initial food stamp process and the renewal as you do through the year and year after year if you're still at a low income. And it's very traumatic, and basically the process is inside out and upside down. It's like taking a head of cabbage, putting it through a grinder, and you come out shredded emotionally. And the individual workers that I encounter each time I have to go there, they sure haven't got people skills. and people skills could sure be used in that type of environment.
So what do you want to tell then our city council members? These are people who are in contact with the officials in that department. What would you say in terms of making this better?
What are you going to do about it?
I'll answer. I think that your story is one that we hear a lot at the food bank, and it's unfortunate. And again, what we've made a decision that over the next 18 months, we really have to collaborate with both the electeds, the labor community. We have to collaborate with a bunch of people because we do need to make this a human situation, and everybody needs to realize that your neighbor may be that person that needs help. And one of the things that we've suggested to the county, and we don't know that it'll actually ever happen, is we need to simplify the process. As Councilman Hueso said, change the name, but we've talked about having a ready application. During this dismal time, if you can create an application that is less controversial, not as big, not as cumbersome, but make one that's simple, that people can be qualified for several programs to get them through this difficult economic time, that's the type of compassion that maybe the community needs to see. And we're hopeful that those things will happen. Again, it is indeed a frustrating situation, but hopefully we'll see improvements. And the greater community is going to have to work together to improve this situation.
And I have another question from a member of the audience here.
Yes, good evening. My name is Brent Hoover. I live in San Carlos, work in Mission Valley. And 2 points. One is financial education for people. It's going back to the same thing as the arts and everything else that gets lost in school, but we don't even start at grade school level unless you get up and get a degree in financial services or something of that nature. You're never even getting the basics of how to balance a checkbook. So I think that has to get integrated at some point. And then also to touch on more Mitch's field here is the nonprofits. I'm also on the board of a nonprofit, Kids Included Together, and we're all feeling it from a fundraising standpoint. And I think it's important for the nonprofits to really reach out. One, we're reaching out from a fundraising standpoint, but also letting people know we need volunteers for these fundraising drives or for these different events or for staffing the food bank. And it's really, I think it's up to the communities to get those messages out there that we can help. We can address what we can control, and that's really trying to come together as a common good and give when we can. It may not be money right now that you can give, and it may not be time, but it can be a combination of the two.
Thank you.
We're
kind of running out of time, guys, but Jim, if you wanted to take that.
I was going to say, doing what we can and doing what we can't, in our case, I think that Ben and I both have a role to play where he's already exercising that, but to encourage the county and the board along the lines of the public may not realize this, but city council members, we don't control the schools, but yet we can influence what happens. They need to know city council members don't control the social service programs. That's the county, but yet we can influence it. And certainly from my standpoint, sending out emails or what have you to community members, encourage them to volunteer, to get involved with the food bank. So there are areas that we can help, and I certainly want to and will continue to as well. And I think it's important that, as tough as it is where we have these different silos that government work within, we also have to make sure that we all work together as a community so each of these goals can be achieved so we don't have the indignity that people suffer when they try to get some assistance.
Okay, thank you, guys. We want to turn now to the national stage, where we're into the final days of the the presidential election campaign. So here, in their own words, are our two presidential candidates on the economy.
I am convinced that until we reverse this continued decline in home ownership and put a floor under it, and so that people have not only the hope and belief they can stay in their homes and realize the American dream, but that value will come up. Now, we have allocated $750 billion. Let's take 300 of that billion and go in and buy those home loan mortgages and negotiate with those people in their homes, 11 million homes or more, so that they can afford to pay the mortgage, stay in their home.
What we haven't yet seen is a rescue package for the middle class, because the fundamentals of the economy were weak even before this latest crisis. So I've proposed 4 specific things that I think can help. Number 1, let's focus on jobs. I want to end the tax breaks for companies that are shipping jobs overseas and provide a tax credit for every company that's creating a job right here in America. Number 2, let's help families right away by providing them a tax cut, a middle-class tax cut for people making less than $200,000, and let's allow them to access their IRA accounts without penalty if they're experiencing a crisis.
We began this discussion by asking how much control we had locally over our economic futures. We know, however, that the outcome of this election, more than any in recent history, will ultimately set the course for us all. Alan, Jim, what do you think the next president has to do to stimulate economic growth in communities like ours?
I think we are in a really serious problem right here. It's the worst since the 1930s. And right now there's a serious problem in terms of consumer confidence. Spending is down, and that is pushing the national economy into a recession if it's not already there. And so I think whoever's going to be elected, I think there's going to be a stimulus package. I think it'll be a combination of tax cuts to various groups, and then I think it'll also be a combination of public works projects. I think there's going to be a lot of spending on public infrastructure, and I think that's necessary to get employment up and get the economy going again.
Have we hit bottom, Alan?
Well, my forecast is that at least locally, I think we're going to have continued weakness in the local economy at least through the first half of 2009. It probably won't be until the end of 2009 before we reach some sort of bottom, and we may be at the bottom then for a while. I don't think it'll be until 2010 before we see a turn up in the local economy.
What's going to happen, Mitch? We saw from the story that the food bank already last year increases 100% in some neighborhoods. I mean, you're seeing the people at your front door, the people who are losing their jobs.
Absolutely. We believe we're the barometer of the economy. And as Alan said, you know, we expect that through 2009, we're going to continue to see numbers increase. We're feeding 19,000 people a day. And we think that number is going to go up. When you watch the lines at specific outlets, and some in your district, Councilman, where they've gone from 600 people waiting in line to 1,000 people waiting in line and to 1,200, that's going to continue to increase. That's our expectation. And we need all the support we can. Again, this is a community effort that's going to have to take place to feed people, get them information, and help them get through this tough time.
You know, I got to tell you, when I was doing the research, the thing that really startled me, 1 in 4 people in this county live in economic hardship, and this is a tourist town. This is a beautiful place to live. Should we be embarrassed? Should we say, what are we doing that we have 1 in 4 people living that way? Donald?
Absolutely. We are a wealthy nation. There is wealth in our region, and we ought to be able to do better. One point I want to make in terms of both food stamp recipients, the people that are going to Mitch's programs, most of those people are at work. While unemployment is increasing, most people are working. So it really does put us back to, so what kind of jobs do we have, and how do we turn the jobs that are here into jobs that can build a new middle class? That's our biggest challenge. That's what we got to focus on.
And of course, Councilman, we're already seeing the effects of this economic crisis trickle down to San Diego. Mayor Jerry Sanders said we're in a $43 million hole at the moment. He's asked city departments to come up with ways that they can perhaps scrape sort of 10% out of their budget for the time being. Is there more coming, do you think? I mean, that's just the start.
You know, what's really at issue here is the state is way out of whack as well. I mean, it was a get-out-of-town budget. it really wasn't ever balanced. And what I fear right now, and I think what Councilmember Hueso and I have talked a lot about, is the concern that we have that, once again, the state of California is going to come calling on the cities and local government and raid us again. And the voters in 2004 passed a constitutional amendment blocking that kind of stuff, but yet there was an escape clause where they can borrow twice in 10 years. And you know what we worry about is if they make that hit, it's yet another $35 million hit on our city. And we're really concerned about that.
Alan, do you think that's coming?
Well, one thing is that California is not alone. There are serious fiscal problems across the country in terms of state government. And so there's been talk that the federal government would come in and give some money to the states to help them deal with their budget situations and help them avoid budget cuts. I think that might actually be a good idea in 2009.
We'll take it.
The federal government might come give us money as the state takes it away from us and as people give it. Okay, right. A bit confusing, but okay. Well, we're out of time, but before we leave you, we have a few more questions for you to think about. Can we accept an American dream that doesn't include owning a house, or one that says we may not live better than our parents?
How will we redefine prosperity as we enter into a time that will be shaped less by want and more by necessity? We want to thank our audience and our panelists for contributing to this discussion.
And we especially want to thank the people you met in our story tonight who bravely discussed their personal finances so publicly.
And thank you for joining us tonight. For KPBS and Envision San Diego, I'm Joanne Ferrian. Good night.
Midnight, that old clock keeps ticking. The kids are all asleep, and I'm walking the floor. Darling, I can see that you're dreaming.